Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan Grech, and here I am. I'm finally on the road in Australia. So I've driven up to the Grampians National Park, and as you can see behind me, this is kind of like a little mountain formation here in kind of central eastern Victoria. And you can see how beautiful it is. I've just woken up, climbed out of the swag. It was actually pretty chilly overnight, just a few degrees above zero. And so, you know, this whole thing, I've been working on this for well over a year now to try and get on the road. It's been 5 or 6 months of real headaches, trying to get all the parts together, trying to actually get the trip off the ground. And now getting up this morning, got up well before sunrise and taking photos. I've just made a coffee on the stove. It all suddenly feels real, and it feels finally like it's happening. Wild camping like this is absolutely what I love doing. It's really my happy place to be out in the wilderness like this. And there's no one else around. There aren't other people camping here. There's no noise, all of that kind of stuff. And I just love it. It's really, really making me happy. And so I ran around camp this morning and took a whole bunch of photos. I'm just about to cook some breakfast. And here in the Grampian, there's tons of tracks to explore. That's kind of one option. And this is a really amazing national park. In plenty of it, you're completely allowed to wild camp if you want to. So this is perfectly legal. There's also a couple of free campsites dotted around. There are paying campsites as well that have more facilities. And then the huge activity here is hiking. That's what it's all about. So there's many different options, whether you do little day hikes up to sort of what you can see behind me and back down again. There's a 3-day multi-hike where you sort of link a bunch of stuff together. And they're actually just about to open a 10-day, 160 kilometer, 100-mile through hike that starts in the very northern part of the park and goes all the way through to the southern section. So hiking here is becoming a really big thing in the Grampians. So enough chit chat from me. Let me show you what this place looks like. It is absolutely stunning, and I couldn't be happier to be on the road. So here I am at my wild camp. I thought I'd show you around before I drive away and get up to activities for the day. And you can see actually behind me here, this thing is actually a gravel pit or quarry or whatever you want to call it. And it's funny, I'm always on the lookout for these, even when I'm not on a trip. I've spent so many nights of my life camping in places like this. So I found ever since I was in Alaska, way back on my first trip, that gravel pits are an amazing place to wild camp because they always have a pretty good access road because heavy trucks need to come in here. Obviously nobody's going to be in here at night, and there usually isn't any kind of gate or anything like that. So being able to wild camp in a place like this, I find to be incredible. And there is even a little fire pit there, so it's obvious that people have wild camped here before me. And I just wanted to show you here, what am I, like 50 yards away from the Jeep. Last night I heard this guy and I was curious how close he got to me. Here on the ground in the sand, these are kangaroo tracks. So I heard this guy thumping along. You can see these are his 2 big feet right here, kind of claws at the front. And I could hear him thumping. He sounded a little bit like a person's feet. And I guess because it was my first night wild camping, and you can see his tracks are actually on top of my tire tracks. So obviously he came in last night. And you know, because it was my first wild camp in a very long time, I probably didn't sleep very deeply and I was kind of, you know, alert for noises. And so when I heard the kind of like thump, thump, thump like that, you know, it sounded like someone walking with really heavy footsteps. But after I thought about it for a second, I'm like, oh, it's just a kangaroo. And I woke up long before sunrise actually to get some photos and videos. And as I was unzipping the swag, I heard a kangaroo hop away. So there's probably one sleeping not that far away from me. But you can see these are the kind of places that I love to find a wild camp. And it takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of kind of, you know, intuition or knowledge, or sometimes I poke down a gravel road and maybe it just dead ends, maybe there's nowhere to get off the road. You have to sort of be willing to try a few different options. And I did check on the map for the national park. There's regions of the park you're not allowed to wild camp, and there's regions that you are allowed to wild camp. So I was careful. I definitely am allowed to wild camp here. I don't want to break any rules. I don't want to get in trouble. But at the same time, I don't want to be in a campground crowded with 30 other people, which there is one maybe 20 minutes down the road. So instead, this is where I would rather camp. This is where I would rather have my morning coffee and have breakfast. And I think I'm going to gear up for the day. I'll go drive some tracks and then get out for some hiking. I think will be the activity for today. My partner Katie has joined me now, and we set out hiking at the far northern end of the park, a region that I've never explored before. After the huge day of hiking, it was getting late as we started searching for a wild camp, which is not usually a good idea. And so we poked down quite a few different gravel roads, just trying to find a clearing big enough to get the Jeep and the swag off the actual driving track. And you can see this track just got smaller and smaller, and it did actually dead end at a clearing that almost would have worked. It was just on a slope and it wouldn't have been great for using the kitchen or setting up the swag. So in the end, we decided to pass and we didn't actually camp down the end of this road.
Perfect.
So it's just early afternoon and we found another great place to wild camp. And you know, wild camping's a funny thing. Lots of people are asking me about how do I do it. And I'll be honest with you, I just sort of poke along gravel roads and I look around. I look for turnouts, I look for side offshoots, especially dead ends. They're always the best. And I did double check again on the park map. It's totally legit to wild camp here where I am. In fact, on this side of the road that I was driving, it's okay. On the other side of the road, it's not okay. And this is actually the parking lot of a waterfall. Check it out, there's a photo on the screen. One of the most beautiful waterfalls in the park, I think. And so this is the official parking lot. And then right next to the parking lot here, there's a little spot. And it's really obvious that other people have wild camped in here too. There's a fire ring back there. There's plenty of space for us to put up the swag, stuff like that. So, you know, these little spots, they're around when you look for them. And they work really, really well, I think, to be able to get out and wild camp. And of course, stay for free, which is, you know, something that I thoroughly enjoy. So you can see it's been a couple of massive days of hiking here in the Grampians. And I actually, you know, I used to come here as a kid And I had no idea how big this place is. For anyone that lives in Victoria, or if you're thinking about visiting, make sure you go and look around beyond just Halls Gap. So Halls Gap, you know, the pinnacle is right above it. That's kind of like central, or the most famous part. But when you head up into the northern section, it is stunning. Right now, I'm over kind of in the eastern part of the park. There's nobody out here. This place is super beautiful. There's waterfalls, there's more hiking, there's Aboriginal rock art. All of these things are here in the Grampians. And again, I guess this is the benefit of COVID making us explore close to home. Here I am exploring part of Australia that I didn't even really know that I was going to come and have a look at. And it's way more beautiful than I remembered. So having a fantastic time. All that's left to do now, I'm going to light the campfire, cook some hamburgers for dinner, and tomorrow we'll bring a whole new day of adventuring. So you guys know I haven't lived in Australia for, well, nearly 20 years now, and I keep coming across these really strange cultural things that I think Australians find really normal, but I'm finding really odd. And so for today's video, I'm going to give you odd Australian sign number 1. And I'm just on a walk here to another Aboriginal art painting site, and there's a sign here on the side of the trail, and it says rock climbing is prohibited, bouldering in certain areas of the national park. And so there's a map here. And I totally get it. I understand why it would be prohibited because, you know, this is a sensitive Aboriginal cultural site and they probably just want to keep people away from the sensitive areas and shepherd them into the areas where rock climbing is allowed. I get it. It makes perfect sense. What really gets me though is the sign, the way that it's written. And, you know, there's this ongoing joke that Australia is still a prison colony and everyone around here breaks the law all the time. And I find that to be a bit of a bad stereotype, being Australian. I don't like it. But check this out. The sign says, I'll read it out to you. It says, under the provisions of regulation, blah, 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 anyone climbing, bouldering up, down, or across natural rock formations is not allowed to do under a permit, or you will, you know, have a penalty. In bold letters, it says penalty, 10 penalty units. So that just leaves me with so many questions. First of all, Australia has a thing called penalty units. Like, what is that? Is that bad? Is 10 of them bad? Am I going to go to jail if I get 10 of them? Or is that like a $10 fine? The sign makes no clarification. I don't know what a penalty unit is. I didn't even know Australia had them. So I find that ridiculous and it feels so quaint and silly and like ye old times, you're going to get penalty units. Even better, it is an offence to interfere with this sign. Penalty, 20 penalty units. So if you do the thing the sign says, you get 10 penalty units. Oh, that sounds bad. But if you interfere with their sign, you get twice as many penalty units. So again, how bad is that? Now am I going to jail for twice as long? Am I getting twice the fine? I have more questions than this sign gives me answers. So again, I just find this kind of thing so quaint and so silly. And in case you don't believe me, I'll show you up nice and close. So here's our penalty of 10 penalty units. And it is an offence to interfere with this sign, penalty 20 penalty units. Maybe I'll keep you guys up to date of how many penalty units I accrue. And if I go to jail, you'll know why. So who knew Australia has penalty units? All right, so here I am 10 minutes later at another Aboriginal rock painting sign. And I guess I probably should have read the sign properly because if there's one thing Australia loves, it's signs and it's explaining things. So it actually tells us what are penalty units. And it says, penalty units are used in Australia to define the amount payable for fines for many offences. That sounds very friendly. As set out in the Monetary Units Act of 2004. Be careful, make sure you get the 2004 edition. One penalty unit is $165.22, effective from the 1st of July 2019 until the 30th of June 2020. New penalty units apply from the 1st of July 2020. So I guess a penalty unit is $165 back then, but no doubt it's gone up with inflation since then. So this is obviously Australia's way of being able to make fines go up with inflation, because people say death and taxes are the two true things in life. When you're in Australia, you have to remember that fines is probably more important than death and taxes. And so $165 for a penalty unit. That means if you go rock climbing here, that's a $1,650 fine. And if you mess with this sign, it's a $3,300 fine for messing with their sign that says you'll get a $1,600 fine if you go rock climbing. So take it seriously, penalty units. Let's hope this is my first and last encounter with them and that I never have to actually pay any of them. But I'll keep you updated on that. It's been a jam-packed 5 days exploring the Grampians, and as you can see, there is a ton to see and do. If you've enjoyed this video, do hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. There are plenty of adventures all the way around Australia coming your way. And if you'd like to go where I went, wild camp where I did, my GPS track logs are available to my supporters over on Patreon. So head over there and check out the perks you get at the different rewards level, including GPS track logs.